Welcome back to the Dynamic Hour 3 with Tim Alexander. And I talked to Chris Harris. He doesn't have a lot of news today, so it's a full hour of you have to deal with the tag team of Deagle and Tim. Dr. Bill and Lord Sterling. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds very impressive. That's why I still use it on my blog. I mean,
imagine if you and I were in
my hometown, Evansville, Indiana, calling myself Lord Sterling, they come after me with a butterfly net. But
I know. Anyway, if we actually
Sutton House Lords and all that silliness, and I got news for you. They're at least as corrupt as the jerks in Washington. So
if we came in as a tag team and we have, those Mexican outfits, because I think the Mexican wrestlers have the neatest outfits for wrestling. And if we had a tag team to kind of take down other people intellectually, we come in with those fancy suits and the helmets, with all the fancy markings and crazy things on them. Be Dr. Bill and Big Tim. How's that? And right now, the issue I tell, and we have a dearth of callers calling in, and I don't know why. We do screen everything. Of course, we don't have an unscreened kind of like, a shouting match where people can kind of spout off about foolishness or anything. We want people, when they listen to the program, walk away less confused, less agitated, and we don't want what we call fear porn. Now, there's a lot of bad things going on in the world, but we have to focus on what are the really important things and take a Christian and a God's perspective view on it rather than panicking, oh my God, it's so bad, it's so bad, it's so bad, and get what we call paranoid. Yes, there is a surveillance system on your phones. Yes, there are bad things happening to the world economy, but guess what? God's not nervous and he's on the throne. And if we focus on the real big important issues and we kind of steer through all this garbage and we don't make people beaten down so much by the scare factor, we can empower people to say they can take back their spirituality, they can take back their financial future, they can take back their health future, they can take back their geopolitical understanding of what's going on, like what's this player doing and that player, what's Trump doing, what's Hillary Clinton, what is the European Union doing about the immigrant crisis. That's why this is I call a higher class of way of approaching it rather than kind of an open forum to let anybody spout off about anything or, a local issue which may not have relevance to the people listening worldwide. It may have some relevance.
Well, now for the scary part. Can we get to the scary part? Because I just
we have to tell it. We have to.
A couple
it's like
hours,
a surgeon
looking at articles to post on my blog and to talk about.
Right.
And as usual, I don't know. I feel like I need to go out and get half drunk after doing this because it's not getting better. I just linked on my news block Europe, and by the way, guys, if you want to find it, do a Google search Lord Sterling Europe, and they'll take you right
or
there.
Europe Business with one S.
I cringe every time you say that because for what other reason they wouldn't let me put it with two S's, and I should have just changed it, but I didn't, and now I have to live with it for years. But anyway, okay, here's an interesting story. All four hemispheres of the world are now engaged in a single war. And let me just read three little sections here. If we peer behind the veil of mainstream media oversimplification, lies, and propaganda, we find that the humanitarian crisis we are faced with today are the straight-line consequences of a decades-old policy on the part of the West, as defined by the U.S., UK, Israel, and others, to subvert and destabilize the very nations that are submerged in civil war and strife. Faced with a burgeoning refugee crisis in Europe sparked by global extremism, U.S. and European officials this week said there is a growing consensus that multinational military campaign against the Islamic State must focus more on targeting the group's nerve centers in Syria. Using thousands of people flowing into Europe every day as a pretense, France and Britain are posed to join Washington in carrying out more airstrikes with greater levels of aggression against the Islamic State in Syria. By the way, Australia, far off Australia, down on the opposite side of the world, is going to join in these airstrikes against Syria. Now,
but the thing is what's so duplicitous about this, and we've talked about it many times in the show, if you're an ISIS person, you're injured, you go to an Israeli hospital.
Yeah.
If the materials are coming from U.S.,
Israeli
in fact,
helicopters
cluster
pick
bombs
you up, they fly you to an Israeli military or civilian hospital.
Right.
And there is even a famous picture of a couple months ago, Bibi Netanyahu visiting a ISIS or a Muslim extremist who was fighting against Syria and shaking his hand and beaming. Of course, the leader of ISIS, Allah Baghdadi, is actually Simon Eliot, an Israeli Jewish guy who's a Mossad agent, an actor, and very well trained in Muslim theology and culture and languages and so forth. But it's all scam. What is happening in Syria, and to a lesser extent in Yemen and Libya, but primarily Syria, is the modern-day equivalent of the Spanish Civil War, which immediately predated all out the Second World War. And that's what you're seeing right now. The flight of all these refugees, which is really terrible, is being used by the same people that have created the mess as an excuse to begin an attack against Syria itself. Now, Veterans Today just has a really hard-hitting article, which I've linked on my blog. Prime Minister Cameroon of the United Kingdom is calling for carpet bombing of Damascus. And what I'm saying, it's increasingly possible and perhaps, shall we say, likely probable that the global banking cartel and the Netanyahu Zionists will begin the Third World War in Syria. Cameroon
I'll take a little different view on that.
This is the term he uses: hard military force against the Damascus government, and calls for the assassination of President Assad.
What we talked about this the other day on Tuesday. I think a little bit differently, and I kind of look at it on multi-level space chess. The Russians basically have done a double checkmate, and Obama. And you mentioned it. You actually picked it up, and most people missed it. That Russia didn't have to actually try to get approval through Greece and what was the other nation?
Bulgaria.
Bulgaria, to actually move the humanitarian aid in, because it's an international right. And when they got refused because of pressure from the U.S., they could have gone through Iranian airspace to get to help.
Well, but Iran doesn't touch Syria. If they go through Iranian airspace, they also have to go through Iraqi airspace, which is likely. However, there's all kind of NATO and allied air forces still based in that part.
Yeah, but they could even gone through Iran and they could have gone south of Iran into south of the Persian Gulf.
Well, there are multiple ways to get there, but they're they have to use mid-air refueling and lots of things. But they can fly from from European Russia, fly down, go through the Strait of Gibraltar, and fly across the Med. They can do that, but that's a very long route. Part of the reason why they did that was not just convenience, though, Tim.
I think it's what Putin did. Is he proved a point. He proved the point that America is willing to actually push unethical, illegal, through international law and treaties, the idea of stopping humanitarian aid by the Russians. Now, what's happened is the Russians in the last year or so have been modernizing the S-400 anti-aircraft systems, etc. So all the Russians have to do is basically, news has to leak out of just how advanced the air defenses are of Syria. And the first attempt by Cameroon or anybody else, Cameron, I call Cameroon, this idiot, from Britain, and America to try to start bombing Syria down inside Syrian territory, and they're going to get blasted out of the sky. And when there's some pilots go down and some drones go down, then it's going to be a different ball game. It's going to be a game changer.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very soon. It's going to happen probably within this month.
Do you have difficulty taking supplements? Are you searching for a high-quality, complete nutritional drink that your whole family will love? NutriMedical's Life Support has arrived. All of your daily nutritional requirements in one quick, delicious drink. Dr. Bill Deagle's Life Support is a proprietary blend of vegan protein, activated vitamins, essential minerals, amino acids, probiotics, green tea, digestive enzymes, anti-inflammatories, cancer.
Wahhabism, he said, we've known about it for 100 years plus. There's no surprise here. This is Wahhabist. He said, we sit at the table. He said, Christians, other Jews, other Muslim sects besides us, Alawites, and we sit at the same table because we're all Syrians. That is very radical, which means they actually can get along. And that's what makes Syria quite different than almost any other nation in the Middle East.
Well,
except for maybe
in
Iran.
fact, he told this priest that I know that he said it's very important to have Christians in Syria because you kind of act as a balancing force between the competing branches of Islam, right. And the Shiites, the Sunnis, the Alawites, and so forth. Yeah. And I think that's true. And also, if you, I mean, I've known plenty of Arab Muslims and plenty of Arab Christians now, and I have to tell you, the differences between night and day. You find a great many of the Christians are very well educated. They're very reasonable people. Their culture is very different. They're not following that crappy Islamic faith. And, well, anyway.
And you have to think about even Bashar al-Assad himself. He was an eye doctor in London.
Sure.
His wife is British. Do people get it? He's not there trying to have some caliphate. He's trying to defend his people in his country. He was called back because his father died. And
well, you're seeing intense propaganda. This last Sunday, The Sun on Sunday, which is a big rag tabloid in London, and I think I've been interviewed a few times by them and most of them, but I know many of the reporters and all that, but you know, they're just, it's a trashy rag, literally. But they did an exclusive poll. 52% Englishmen say bomb Syria now. Now, I doubt that it's anywhere near that, but, well, maybe they fudged the figures a little bit. Maybe they reversed the order. But maybe it was 25% instead of 52. But the point is, the propaganda arms of the mainstream media are using the picture of that poor little kid, and I cried over it. I'm 6'2", big guy, and I sat here and I looked at that little kid and then his brother, and I mean, I was terrible, just terrible. But the point is, they're using these refugees, and they're trying to spin this in a way that we've got to go after Assad. Assad's the fault of all this. No, Assad's not the fault of this. Just the Russians aren't behind the problem in Ukraine. We caused the war and the revolution in Ukraine. We've caused this and continue to feed it. Assad, basically, the Syrian army has defeated ISIS and Al-Qaeda multiple times. We just keep recruiting thousands of new poor Arabs, giving them 50,000, 100,000, whatever a year. Plus, we're telling these guys from a very sexually repressed society, you can go in and buy sex slaves. You can rape these women, these young girls.
Not only that, they can take over these Christian women. They had 17 Christian women just a month ago that refused to be, quote, married to these guys and have sex with these new warlords that came into their village. And they literally beheaded the women right in front of everybody.
Yeah, well,
this is what's going on now. What do you think of the comment of Trump about we've got to take these refugees? Now, the fact is, all 6 Gulf nations, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Arab Emirates, etc., they're not taking one Syrian refugee.
Well, it's better than that. I've got to find it because I hadn't linked it yet. I've been kind of under the weather the last 2 days, and I've really been slacking off. But Saudi Arabia has enough air-conditioned tents that are unoccupied for 100,000 people, and they have not taken any refugees. This is all part of a psyop plan to how do we jumpstart WW3? How do we jumpstart a general Middle East regional war?
The way they want it.
How do we take over Syria and then go on and attack Iran because Iran will attack us? But that's what this is all about.
Tim, here's what's going to happen. Okay, this is a reality. Russia, if you actually look at the Russian Constitution and the Russian pledge by the Russian military people, which will die for their fatherland. They will not wait until all hell breaks loose. They have a preemption strike if it looks inevitable attitude, which means the Russians aren't going to wait until things get too bad. They're just going to unleash hell on our military bases and turn them into ashes pretty well instantly, and there's not a damn thing we can do to stop them. So if Obama pushes, and they push, there won't just be an airstrike against, let's say, Syria. There may be a counterstrike against all our military bases and our Navy, and then they'll get a big call on the phone, the red phone, in Washington, D.C., to say, do you give up Amerikanskis? And guess what Obama's going to do? He's going to fold like a cards.
Dr. Bill, once you get into a actual all-out war, whether it's completely World War III or a general Middle Eastern war, once you cross that line, which is the ultimate line, the chaos is what war is all about, bad and evil and murder, mass murder. But, the best laid plans of men and mice get torn up very quickly. As they say, the
Russians don't want to do it because they know that we would
evaporate with the first contact with the enemy, because the enemy gets to vote too, you see. And
exactly. Well, that's the point. The Russians basically don't have the same philosophy. See, this is something people don't grasp.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. But Russia and China don't have an attitude toward empire. They don't want to blow up California or Las Vegas. They want to buy it. The Russians want to have trade so they can actually develop industry. They want to make a deal with the Germans and the Europeans so they can sell a lot of stuff. What's happened in the last year or so is they've lost a lot of those markets. The Europeans have lost a lot of the Russian material, and so the Russians would buy all kinds
here's the crutch of the problem. The Russians and the Chinese want to be partners. They don't want to be owned by the global banking cartel.
Exactly. And the problem is, that's push comes to shove. The Russians won't just, roll over and play dead. They'll nuke our military targets and call us on the red phone, do you give up Amerikanskis? And if we haven't launched a nuclear attack against them, which, by the way, would be very catastrophic, most people above ground are going to be wishing, as they say, the living will envy the dead, as they say.
That is correct.
We use mobile devices right against our bodies every day, but growing...
Exactly, yeah.
And several of the top officers resigned from the Navy after that.
Exactly, yeah. One of the things happened recently, Tim, this is something to mention, in the last year, the Russian submarine actually showed up in the Gulf of Mexico. And they've also done air campaigns where we were having exercises in Russian jets using, we call plasma front wing kind of signature changes to the radar signature of these aircraft. We're able to fly literally within, half a mile.
I won't mention him, but a friend of mine who is kind of a leader in leading-edge aerospace technology, I was talking to him about that, and he said, I don't believe it. And I said, well, I hate to tell you, but and this was a couple years ago, I said, we just had an instant where a Zhukov not only penetrated the outer but the inner air defenses of a U.S. supercarrier battle group and flew multiple simulated attack runs. We didn't even see him coming because they jammed, we jammed all the radar and all. And then we repeated this in the Black Sea, or they repeated this in the Black Sea. And there was several destroyers involved, and several of the senior officers ended up retiring from the Navy after that. Now, I have a great deal of faith in our Navy. I really do, because I want to tell you, those guys are good.
Yeah.
But... just like anything else, what one man can do, another man can work around.
Exactly, yeah. And Tim, did your friend have what's called the anal wink sign? You know what that means? That means his anus contracted significantly because he realized he was going to get... And we were
he wasn't on the ship. He
had to realize if he was promulgating a
top
lie,
engineer and executive. But what I was describing for him, that certainly happened to our people.
Yeah, but that was a reality check for him.
This Zhukov fighter got right in, and all it had to do was lunge. Well, I mean, it could have played hell with just its automatic cannon.
Right.
It literally got in. We didn't see it coming. It used a plasma stealth shield. Now there's. We have a lot of stuff that's secret. They have a lot of stuff that's secret.
Yeah, but we're not dealing with Russia.
It's crazy. Why do we want to fight Russia? Why do we want to fight China? Why do we want to get involved in fighting Syria and sending our boys and British and German and Australian boys
death and destruction.
to die there? For what purpose?
None. No, here's the point. And the way I like to look at it, and you're good because we present what I call multiple possible timelines with different drivers, and we adjust the dialogue. For example, one of the dialogues that I'm hearing lately is that Trump is saying that he wants to accept all these refugees, which sounds like a humanitarian thing to do. But the problem is a lot of these people that they're importing are throwing fecal matter, saying curse words, Allahu Akbar, when they get into these places.
Some of these people are not Syrian. They're coming from Macedonia. They're economic refugees. In other words, they simply want to go to Germany and suck off the German welfare system.
Now, here's what I see happening. Europe is collapsing. It's not going to collapse. It's collapsing. Secondly, the Germans and the Europeans are going to put a stop to it at some point. They're just going to pull out. And that is also going to precipitate a crisis where Europe is going to go one of two ways. It'll become Fortress Europe, where he basically becomes a military police state, and a Super Europe, which will also probably absorb Turkey, which would mean a large part of the population will be Muslim. We're also looking at the realignment. Remember, we also use the European system for satellite targeting. We actually share it with the Europeans now, which, by the way, with the backdoor with some former CIS Eastern Bloc nations, there's a backdoor to Russia. So Russia has a pipeline to get an access to our satellite targeting. Russia doesn't want to engage us in war. They want respect. China wants respect. They want their economy to be treated with respect. When we say we're going to take over their centrally controlled economy of Russia and China, they're scared. And they know the West can actually crush them because we are crushing them. And what's going to happen is when the Russians checkmate, this is what I predict, you're going to see the Cameron and these other people have a conniption. If they actually do put a jet over Syrian airspace and they lose a few pilots or a few drones and they can't do the carpet bombing, what are they going to do next? Now, they don't realize that if the Russians decide to engage, all they have to do is train these Syrians to lock on Alexander hypersonic Iskander's cruise missiles at our Navy and hypersonic cruise torpedoes, the Akon's hypersonic cruise torpedoes, that travel at like 275 knots. And
it's an underground rocket.
Navy.
It actually, how it works.
It's an underoceanic rocket, yeah.
Yeah, it part of the exhaust goes out the nose cone, forms a bubble of hot gas, and the rocket torpedo actually flies through that bubble, which is constantly being created in front of it, but most of the thrust is going out the back. So it's not actually in the water. It's in this hot bubble of hot exhaust.
Yeah, so it doesn't have the normal resistance.
And the hot exhaust is actually what's pushing the water out of the way.
Right,
there are... Look, when you get into classified stuff, and I don't have access to all this stuff, but when you've done the work that I've done, you pick up on stuff. You can look at something and say, I think I know what they're doing. And
you got to tell them that about. Not only if I had contact, I still have contacts, and I have ways, both naturally and otherwise, to actually know what's going to happen and what's going on. What I'm saying is, I think we're at the precipice of things. For example, 1988, they published this article about the Phoenix currency. I think the timeline I see is the globalists have decided they're going to create enough chaos of war. They're going to create enough chaos of credit and currencies. They're going to create enough crashing of second and third world currency systems and economic systems that the world will clamor for a phoenix, a rise from this dearth of currencies and debt and the start of a famine.
I think you're right. I think that is one of that's in their
That's their
playbook.
prime directive. They've already published it that they're going to do this, and they've actually have multiple sources from the World War II.
But remember, the enemy gets a vote too, and they have enemies to that program.
Well, I think they're going to have a temporary peace treaty, but the Bible says that peace treaty will be broken, and that peace ultimately is certified by the first day of the sacrifice on the Temple Mount after they've split the city, split the state. For example, this week France has endorsed the Palestinian state. The United Nations, under the Pope, is actually doing the same thing. He's endorsing a peace to bring about a Palestinian state.
Well, and keep in mind that the president of France is not only Jewish and a Zionist, but he's a Rothschild operative, as his predecessor was before him.
Right. So when that happens,
when you're saying France, just as when we say America, it's not the French people, it's not the American people, it's the tentacles that control the front man that sits in the White House or the presidential palace in Paris, and those tentacles go back to the same group of small group of
bankers,
families,
which
headed
Mayor
by
Armstrong
Rothschild.
Rothschild said, "I care not what current or political system you have. I care who coins the currency." So
right,
that's
I care not who sits on the throne. I only care about who controls the money of a nation.
Which is why we talk about carrot bars. We talk about I recoined the first hour on Tuesday and Thursday, KBU, or Carrot Bars University. This is an alternate currency to this world system that's about to crash. And people need to know, we'll be on the top of the heap, but it'll be a very, very bad heap. In other words, what it'll mean is, it's like this quote in the Bible, touch not the wine and the oil, but a day's wages or an omer for an omer of wheat, or enough food to literally feed you for a day.
Well, so, what I have identified literally decades ago, because you could see these broad trend lines forming, even a long time ago. And what I have always been saying is the most dangerous time is when one group feels so powerful that they reach out and they want it all. They want literally global control, new world order.
Exactly, and they don't even show
everybody that has to give up their freedom, their power, and I'm talking about people at the top in places like China and Russia, will not go along with it because they know they're dead.
Tim. They have so much hubris, they actually don't even show the respect to lie well. They're telling us straight up
we're getting killed too, and us with it.
Yeah, it's really, really scary right now.
Do you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS?
Then get on board with the Tax Admiral and let
Tim, for the audience out there, I know the tone of the program today is a lot of it's pretty negative, but the positive side is this. We can take control of our health with NutriMedical. We can take care of our spirituality by getting out of what we call the 501c3 churches and forming what are called home churches that are real Christians and start taking care of each other. And don't tithe to a church, tithe to your neighbors that are in need and to God's will. In other words, whatever you do in God's will is blessed, but if it's not in God's will, don't do it. And then finally, get involved with carrot bars, an alternative currency, which eventually is going to be an alternative to the mark of the beast. The Phoenix currency that's going to come on the world, probably in a matter of months or years, in stages, it's going to actually be foisted on the planet. I see this situation as going to get so dire, the world will accept a peace treaty, and it says in the book of Hosea and Acts that when they shall say peace and security, then destruction shall come upon them suddenly. That means God's prophesying the start of a false peace, which is the start of the 7-year agreement, a period of false peace, 1,230 days, the sacrifice cut off 1,230 days later, which is on Yom Kippur, and 30 days later, the actual middle of the 7 years, the Battle of Armageddon starts. And by the way, there's no rapture. It says in the Bible, I want to clear this up for anybody out there who thinks they know better. The rapture is a rapture of evil taken out of the earth. So anybody out there who thinks they're a biblical expert, just take the words of Jesus. I like the way I called a comment by one of my pastor friends that the red letter part of the Bible is the God for dummies. And if Jesus says, they're the vultures, there's the body, when the so-called rapture occurs, it's not a good people taken out of the earth so they can look down and go, ooh, look away, it's bad. No, it's the evil taken out of the earth.
Well, Dr. Bell, for 1,850 years approximately, Christians basically did not have this concept that some of them have today of the rapture. It's a very recent theological concept It's not
it's a
something
recent
that
lie.
literally almost 2,000 years of Christians have believed in. And it came from the Schoenfeld Bible people. And if you really look into Schoenfeld and where he got his money from, it's very, it looks like it's Rothschild money to me. I think it's all scam. I don't think theologically it stands up to...
right, well, here's the point. Where we're going to, if we took all of your analysis of all the things, because you do a really good blog every day, people should check it out daily. As I said before, and I'm going to repeat this from Friday, the sealing of it's not an absolute number, it's a number of completeness, signifying the 12 stones, the 12 religious, we call spiritual giftings that stop the piercing of the arrows of the true Christians starts this month. And the reason is, events are going to make it very evident that God's in control, the devil's in his final rage. Where is he going about the earth to destroy mankind? And anybody who is a moderate believer better now move into what's called serious belief. And that means you don't get the belief. You beg God and say, God, give me belief to get through this mess because it's overwhelming us.
Yeah,
and we're not talking fear porn. We're talking about
are really beginning to come off. Tinjan was clearly nuked. At first, I thought it had to have been a rod of God attack, but
remember even if it was, but let's take a balanced viewpoint. There's a lot of industrial stupidity going on in China.
Yeah, we have 4 in a row. And they started within 24 hours after China began the currency war.
Yeah, well, the thing is, although they had signatures of so-called high explosives, and it may well be, there's a good high possibility.
Well, the blast hole was too deep for it to have been anything but a nuke. The veterans today has written some pretty good stories that.
Let's put it this way:
by experts.
Let's say if there was a 60% chance
confirmation, Tinjan was nuked. This was no chemical fire. It was China's.
Tim, let me ask you this question. Let's say there's a 75% chance that they're correct. The veterans today is correct.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of damage does it do to American-Chinese interactions if they think we whacked them 4 times?
Well, it goes beyond that. They also
right. Now, here's the point. Let me finish my question.
We triggered the stock crash.
But here's the question. So, if there's a 75% chance, let me finish my question. If there's a 75% chance that it happened, that we did it, what about the 25% chance that we didn't, and that it was their stupidity and their industrial? If you actually talk to people in China, and I've talked to engineers,
I know.
They are so sloppy, and they follow no regulations at all.
Pictures and everything.
Right.
I knew a billionaire that became a billionaire building in China. But look, here's the thing.
Well, let me finish my question.
Okay, go ahead.
The point is, if the 25% chance that it didn't, then unless you had a proper investigation, like remember when they made the accusations that the Syrian government used chemical weapons against their own people, which the Russians had their own experts come and say that's garbage, and they had international experts come saying that's not true. We need to have an international agency come in and investigate to say, what the hell happened here? What is the forensics?
I don't think
I took care of the forensics team that went to the Alfred P. Murrah building in 1995.
Well, once you admit that someone has used a nuke on you.
No, they can't admit it, okay? You can't admit it. You have to have forensics.
What do you do in response?
Tim, let me ask you the questions. I'm a kind of a medical legal expert, okay? Expert witness, okay? And here's what I would say as a forensic medical legal expert, because I am. Certified by Stony Brook Center, the American Board of International Medical Examiners in every specialty, and offered actually to get a board membership of the National Board for the American College of Occupational Environmental Medicine years ago. This is like 20 years ago. So here's the questions I'd ask in a court of law. Number 1, did you bring a forensics team to actually get samples of all the toxic chemicals and a radius of those samples and where they're located on GPS coordinates down to a meter? Number 2, do you have a toxicological sampling of the radiotoxins to indicate if there was a nuke? It's really easy to determine if a nuke is present.
The answer is yes, but it's classified, so the answer is no.
No, and you can bring in an international team in there. Something like this actually just would say to me, the United Nations or an international agency a collaboration of nations like Russia and America should come in, and China, and have an international forensic team
What I'm
come in and
saying,
analyze
Bill,
it.
is China doesn't want that out.
No, here's the point.
They're
the only way to settle
in this case, but they don't want it out because it ties their hands in terms of response. Then their people demand they do they do response. So the victim and the guilty party doing it,
I'm trying to say,
both don't want it uncovered.
But here's the point. This is how you defuse the situation. If you don't defuse it, and let's say there's a fifth time, well, this one is going to be a lot bigger. And the Chinese are vastly underestimating what America and the West will do to them. They are incredibly naive. And if you're listening in Chinese, you better translate to your people in the PLA. If you push it too far, America will turn every one of your cities into dead zones. And I'll give you an example of a quote. I actually spent time on July 4th, July 10th, 1994, because I have photographic memory, at roughly 4:10 p.m. in the afternoon, Colorado Mountain Standard Time. A 4-star general told me these specific words. We have weapon systems in space that can collimate a gamma beam to a country or a city, and we can scan it like a television, the old style, cathode ray tube with a gamma beam, and we can kill everyone in it without starting a grass fire or bubbling up the paint in the walls or burning the curtains, and everyone in that zone.
Well, because they're adjusting the frequency to human life, correct?
We're talking about gamma. You focus collimated gamma beams from space-based weapon systems. The Chinese have no freaking idea what they're dealing with. They're dealing with the dragon empire of America and the global satanic bankers that the Sabbatean Satanistic Jews sacrifice and worship the coiled serpent god. They don't worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They worship Satan. And believe me, he's a super intelligent being. You cannot diss.
He's also the biggest loser in the universe.
Yeah, but he's also the most intelligent created being that ever existed. And people need to grasp that. You're dealing with dark majesty of evil. You're not just dealing with average stupid evil. You're dealing with incredibly smart evil.
Oh yeah, but God is infinitely wiser.
Exactly. Infinitely wiser. The point is that the only way to disable this is to actually do a forensic eval, and if it doesn't happen, and there's more conflict, and the Chinese decide to do a cybernetic attack and knock our power grid, look out, China, because the West will just clean you.
We are already beginning.
We're so close to the precipice of. Yeah, that's why with this time and these issues, we're seconds and minutes away from a peace treaty. Because
get right with God, folks.
Peace treaty's coming quick, because things could go wrong, and the bear bombers could set out their cruise missiles any day. So a peace treaty's coming now.